Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back. This is episode 221 of the Sample Chapter Podcast. And this week we have a very exciting interview with a one-of-a-kind guest. Really is the best way to describe him. My guest is toy maker, inventor, executive, sculptor, and now author. I'm talking about the author of the brand new book coming out soon, A Game Maker's Life by my guest, Jeffrey Breslow. Mr. Breslow is responsible for so many games we all know and love. Games like Simon, Mousetrap, Operation Gestures, and of course one of my own personal favorites, the Evel Knievel motorbike. Oh my gosh, I spent so many hours with that thing every day after I got that for Christmas. Mr. Breslow is now in the Toy Hall of Fame. He is quite the curious mind, very creative kind of guy. And we're having a really wonderful discussion today talking about his past. Such a rich history and lots of stories about how things came together, one thing or another, including among them, Simon, how the game of Simon came about. We're discussing how retirement is a bad word, and that as he describes it, he didn't retire, he just changed careers, because he's now a full-time sculptor. We find the incredible power of a teacher's influence on his life. We get some insight into his sculpting career and a few pieces that he's worked on, and so much more. It's really a wealth of information into his life, and talking more about this book, Game Maker's Life, which comes out August 30th, a week from now after this episode comes out. And I know it's such a good conversation. I cannot wait to get you over to it. It's going to be coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Before we do that, I want to thank my sponsor, Scrivener. Scrivener's been with us for several years now, and I do all of my writing on that platform. Hey, check out this advertisement for how you can save 20% on the regular desktop version. Jason here. Hey, I wanted to take a moment and tell you about my favorite writing tool, Scrivener. Now, I know you've heard about Scrivener because their writing software has been embraced by hundreds of thousands of other writers like you and I, from the novice to best-selling novelists. The reason we all use it is because of Scrivener's core concept to bring all the writing tools you use together in a single application. And with tools like automatic backup, character maps, project goals, and let's not forget that amazing corkboard, you can see why I use Scrivener every day. As a bonus for Sample Chapter Podcast listeners, use code CHAPTER for 20% off your desktop version. Scrivener writing software, built by writers for writers. And thank you once again to Scrivener. I also want to thank affiliate of the show, Writer's Block Coffee. They are home to 3 delicious flavors of coffee. There is the signature Writer's Block Blend. There is the Deadline Dark, and my personal favorite, the Whiskey Barrel Aged Blend. You can try one, you can try them all, you can order one time, or you can set it up for monthly automatic shipments. Whichever way you go, you will not be disappointed. And as an affiliate of the show, that means that whenever you make an order, not only will you save 10% if you follow my link in the show notes, or if you go to writersblockcoffee.com and use coupon code SAMPLECHAPTER, then you'll save 10%. And then the show also gets a little kickback to help out with anything show related. Speaking of coffee, I've done a thing. I went in and set up. I had a few people asking how they could support the show, how they could do things, but they weren't interested in coffee. They weren't interested in t-shirts and stuff at TeePublic, but they just wanted to help out the show. So I did a thing this past week, and I got set up on buymeacoffee.com. So if you go over to buymeacoffee.com/samplechapter, you'll see our very simple looking page right now, and you can support the show. You can offer to set something up and support the show on I guess it's a monthly basis. I'm actually pretty new to that. Was trying to decide whether to go with Patreon or with this, but this is a new thing for the show, so we'll see how this goes. I don't know if anybody's serious about wanting to do something, but I think it'd be pretty fun if this was a fan supported show, and if you guys wanted to help out, then that's great. And if not, hey, it doesn't matter. Everything on here is free to your ears anytime you like. As well as our wealthy backlist of more than 200 episodes of incredible authors and sample chapters. And speaking of shows, I want to thank Pop Goes Culture Network, home to about a dozen other shows, all of them fun, all of them pop culture related. So if you are interested in anything in that general genre, then make sure you follow the link in the show notes over to the Pop Goes Culture Network home and check out all the fantastic shows that they have to offer. Well, as for me, it is September is coming fast. I'm working hard on my short story. Hi, Bandit. Working hard on my short story. That's going to be, I got to have the first draft. Well, first, I have to have an edited draft ready and submitted by September 1st. So I'm hard at work on that right now. And then on the side, I'm also still working hard on Bandit 2. And it's coming along. It's coming along. I'm really happy with it. And rest assured, I will let you all know when I have something ready to go. But speaking of ready to go, how about we go ahead and hop on over to our interview with the incredibly creative Jeffrey Breslow. Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Wow, today we are taking a little jump back in the Wayback Machine, riding down memory lane, going back to the days of our childhood, and kind of reliving some of those memories with the games and toys that we all grew up with. Because my guest author today is none other than the inventor of so many of those beloved toys, Jeffrey Breslow. Jeffrey Breslow is a preeminent toy and game inventor and designer who spent over 41 years inventing toys and games ever since graduating with a BFA from the University of Illinois in Industrial Design in 1965. By the age of 34, he was the youngest managing partner of Marvin Glass and Associates, the leading toy design company in the world at that time of 1976. They invented such games as Simon, Operation, Gestures, and the Evel Knievel motorcycle, which I had myself, along with Mousetrap and Uno Attack. In 1988, Jeffrey was inducted to the National Toy Hall of Fame in New York City. He left the business in 2008 to become a full-time sculptor, and now you can add author to that exquisite resume of it. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the show, Jeffrey Breslow.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here and chat with you.
The pleasure is all mine. I've been just loving this book and going down so many memory lanes. I can't even read very much because every time I read a little bit, I'm telling my wife, "Oh, you remember this book, this game?" And she and I are just shooting memories back and forth and talking. And she likes to make fun of me because I could never play Mousetrap all the way through. I love just setting it up and then let's get it going.
Okay.
So how are you doing? How's things going?
I'm doing great. The book has been very exciting for me. I actually started it 5 years ago, and I never realized that would take quite as long to do. But when I started to write, I'm a very good typist, but I got notebooks and I wrote it all in longhand. And what that did was slow me down, and it helped my memory to remember all the things I was trying to do. So it was a nice process for me. And then, of course, I could hardly read my scribbling, but I was able to, and ended up typing it up and getting a publisher. And and when I signed the deal with the publishing company a year ago, I said, how long would it take? And they said, it'll take about a year. I said, a year? And that's what it's taken. So anyhow, it's been a wonderful thing for me. It's really, and primarily I started this as a gift for my 4 grandsons who are 14, 12, 9, and 6.
Okay.
Because they kind of know what I did, but they really didn't know all the stories and everything else. So, who knows how long I'll be here, but it's a gift basically for them.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And, it's funny because I talked to some authors who, like myself, once I became a grandparent or found out I was going to be a grandparent, that's when I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be an author by now. I'm supposed to be a writer. So that's when I got serious about it, and it took me a couple of years before my first book came out. But so it's fascinating that, you're the same way. It's like, this was a gift for your grandchildren, and going forward from there. And that's amazing that you took the time to write this out longhand. I was going to ask about that process, because you spent, after 40 plus years of working into it, and then you've been retired for quite a while. What was that like, going back through
Well, I hate the R word. I haven't been retired. I just changed careers. I'm a
it? There you
full-time
go.
sculptor. I've been doing that for 13, 14 years. But when I'm in town, I'm at my studio 7 days a week. I was there this morning. So I don't like that word for me. What are
Mm-hmm.
you retired from? I just decided I knew that I wanted to sculpt when I left the toy business. And so I started doing it while I was still working there. And I stepped down as president and made my younger partner president. And I hung around for a year and a half, but he was so good I could have left at any time and he would have been fine. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that my other 2 partners who left the business before I did, I was the last one to leave, that the business is still going on and still very successful. And I think that if you're a good manager, president of a company, and your goal is to make it run without you,
Mm-hmm.
if you leave and it doesn't work, you haven't been, in my opinion, you haven't done a very good job of running the company.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that. And that's one of the, let's see, how do you put this? The silver linings, that I remember hearing a lot about during the pandemic, when COVID first hit and everybody was staying home, was everybody started playing games again, board games,
Yeah,
and trying new things. And I remember hearing people talking about, oh my gosh, we got in this big argument over an Uno game, and trying out Operation and different stuff. And that was pretty cool to hear so many people, though, going back to my kids, my wife and I, we had always made sure to have a wealth of board games that we love to play with the kids. And about once a month, we would sit down with them and play something to try and keep their interest away from the TV and away from the video games
right.
once in a while. So that's good then.
I think it's great that's coming back. The video games are very solitary. They're very kind of selfish, but the fun of playing with other people and learning how to win and lose gracefully, it's
Mm-hmm.
very socializing, and I think it's quite important. And I've always said that a good game is a good combination of skill and luck. I mean, the only game that's just totally skill is a game of chess, and the good player will beat the okay player all the time. But other types of games, there's a combination of both, and there's a good balance between the two. And I like to say, if I'm playing the game and I win, it's because I'm skillful. If you win, well, you got lucky cards or you got lucky roll of the dice or something. Let's play again. So that's, I think that's what we look for in a game, that it's the right combination of both things, skill and luck.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's very true. I would say that's where something like Operation comes in too. You gotta have that skill to having a steady hand and a little bit of luck to get that. What was it? The wishbone,
Right.
I think, was the hardest one to get out. Oh my gosh.
Right.
I remember my grandfather. We got that for Christmas one year, when I was younger, and I think within the first hour, my grandfather was like, "Hey, let me see that game," and then he like unhooked the buzzer on there so we could still see the light. We knew when it lit up, but he was like, "That's enough of that in there."
That's pretty funny. Yeah, very cute.
So now you didn't start off looking to get into a game or a
Yeah.
job like this. It was kind of an accident.
Well, I wasn't motivated when I was in high school. I wasn't a very good student. When I was a kid, I loved taking things apart. That was a big thing for me. Building things, taking things apart, see how they worked. So I was always intrigued with that. And one of the first things, my dad, there was a bar across from his factory, and they had nickel slot machines, and these were all mechanical, no electronics, no bells and whistles, just a mechanical device. And he bought one. The guy had to get rid of him. He said the police were coming down on him and get rid of him. So my dad bought one for $25 and brought it home. And I would put nickels in there. And I said, Dad, can I open up the back and see how this thing works? And he said, okay, but don't take it apart. Okay. I spent weeks, because you pulled this arm and there were escapements, springs, everything. And that whole thing, it took the nickel and it put it in the kitty in the back. It put it in the jackpot. It put it in the payout thing. And it was fascinating how it knew what to do with all these escapements, springs, and everything else. It was quite something. But I could make it pay out by holding the wheels and waiting, turning them up to the bars. But I never did take it all apart, but I studied it. And I was fascinated by it. So I was always mechanically minded. And then I wasn't a very good student in high school. My only A in high school was an art class. I had a wonderful teacher. The rest were not very good. And then I ended up going to a small school. I could have gone to the University of Illinois. Even though I graduated in the bottom quarter of my high school class, they would have accepted me. But I started at a small school. And at the end of the first year, I was on terminal probation, which was not something my folks were happy to hear. And I took a weekend trip just to Illinois to see some friends. And I went into the art and design building, which was new. And there was a display of industrial design in the corridor. I didn't even know what industrial design was, but I was blown away by the display. And it was instructor Ed Zagorski, and his office was across the hall. He was sitting there, in sandals and a t-shirt and wild hair. And he was 39 years old. I was 18. And I said, tell me about design. And in 20 minutes, he changed my life. And
Wow.
so I went back. I got good grades so I could transfer. And then I had to start over again as a freshman. So my first year and a half of college was down the drain. But my folks were happy I had something that I was in love with. And so Ed Zagorski was my mentor for a little over 65 years. He died a year and a half ago at 99 and a quarter. Okay.
Oh, wow.
He said, if you ask a little kid, the kid's 3.5, I'm 4 3/4. He said, if you're over 90, you can start using fractions again. I said, okay. But he mentored me my whole life and was a dear friend. And I got into mentoring programs later on at the University of Illinois and went back there to mentor other kids and learned a lot about that.
That's amazing. What was one of the first toys or games that you started off with once you started with the company?
What happened is we did a toy project in Ed Zagorski's class, sophomore. And so it was design a toy or a game, something new, original. And in design, it's graded by a jury of the faculty because it's subjective. It's not like a math problem or something else. So somebody might like it, somebody not. So it was all jury graded. And I did this children's modular furniture. I made a little prototype, and then I made big ones, that blocks that fit together, and they would an easel, a seat, a stool. And I took some Kodachrome slides in a kindergarten room. And so mine thing came in second, which was just astounding for me. The thing that came in first was a little blue box that had zigzag openings, a probe, wasn't a tweezers, a probe and a buzzer, and you put it in there and the thing buzzed. And this was John Spinello. And I said, what are you gonna do with that thing? He said, I got an uncle in Chicago who works for a guy by the name of Marvin Glass. I said, what do they do? He said, it's a toy design company. Are you kidding? And John graduated 6 months ahead of me. He took the box to see Marvin. Marvin wasn't hiring. He said, I'll give you $500 for the box. And John sold the box for $500. Now, at that time, a semester tuition at the University of Illinois for in-state student was $470 for a semester. So $500 was a semester tuition, So John sold it, and it ended up becoming operation. Yeah.
Wow.
So when I got done with school, I went to see Marvin. He wasn't hiring, and I ended up designing medical equipment and supplies for 2 years. They kept me out of Vietnam, and then I was making things on my own just to get hired by Marvin. And I went back there 2 years later and ended up getting a job.
That's an incredible story.
Amazing. I mean, amazing that, and I fell in love with it. He was also a mentor, an amazing guy, kind of a character. He was a Steve Jobs character. The only thing that mattered was work, 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 work. His personal life, everything was a mess except the work. I mean, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was an interesting guy. And I spent 7 years with him, and he had a stroke and his body fell apart and he died at 59 years old. But I did spend 7 years with him, and it was kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite product that you worked
Oh,
on?
you know what? When I was there working, the favorite one is the new one that you're working on all the time. I mean, what happened yesterday? It's like anybody else. It's like a songwriter, a guy that writes a lot of books. It's the one you're working on. That's
Yeah,
always.
it's hard
And
to pick a favorite child.
yeah, but the interesting thing is we were in the entertainment business. We did things to entertain children. And the entertainment business is built on failure. You're making books, movies, TV shows, Broadway plays, fail, 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 fail. Okay. And that's the good news and the bad news. It's just, that's the nature of it. And you have to accept that. You have to be ready to, okay, that didn't work, try another one. Okay, that didn't work, try another one. Now, if you have another profession, you can't, you're a surgeon, you can't fail too often. You're a lawyer, you can't, accountant, you can't fail too often. But the entertainment world, unless you understand that, it's not for you. And I mean, a movie studio makes 20 movies. If 2 or 3 pay for all the ones that don't make it, and there's no way of testing, no way of figuring it out. I mean, it's not possible. And some of the biggest hits in the toy industry would have tested terribly, and I can give you examples of a number of them. I mean,
Yeah.
anyhow.
Oh my gosh. So when you began working on the book, going down the memories, was there anything that you'd forgotten? Anything that surprised you in that process?
Well, no, I mean, nothing really surprised me, but it all kind of came back. And so when I got hired, okay, and I'll tell you the story. That's what I'm going to read a little bit in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I had never really bought toys. I didn't have any kids. I mean, so I wasn't. And the first thing I did before I started work, I went to Toys R Us and I walked up and down the aisles and I spent the whole day there. And it got to the point where the manager came over and said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Well, I just got this job with this toy designer here in Chicago, and I'm just doing a little research. And this toy, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, this one here, Mousetrap, this one here, were all done by him. They were manufactured by different companies." He said, "Wow." He said, "You can be here all day if you want." I said, "Okay." and before I started, a week later, I had spent hour upon hour in Toys R Us, walking up and down the aisles, looking at everything. And later on, when I was running the company, if somebody was in a little slump, I said, "Take the afternoon off and spend it all at the toy store." Now, you can't do that too much today. There's smaller stores.
Yeah.
The biggest toy retailer is Amazon, so,
Right.
but it was a great way to get inspired.
Yeah, there was a little pang of memory that kind of went through me when you mentioned Toys R Us. I'm like, oh gosh, those were the days.
Oh, I mean, it was just overwhelming. I mean, really overwhelming, the amount of merchandise. And also what happened is, how am I going to come up with something new? Look at all the stuff that's here, everything's been thought of, but we still were very successful. And what Marvin did, before I went to work for him, he tried to manufacture toys in the late 50s, and he kept losing his ass. Said, "I'm not going to do that again." He looked at the record business, he looked at the book business, and said, "I want to do that in the toy business. I want to design something, show it to a manufacturer, and if he likes it, license and have him pay me a royalty. Doesn't like it, I'll show him another one. I'll show him another one." So he was the pioneer in doing that in the toy industry. And at first, it was very difficult because the companies in the industry were typically started by somebody who had an idea for a toy. I mean, Mattel, Elliot and Ruth Handler. Elliot was an industrial designer and his wife was the businesswoman, and they started this company, Mattel. And Mattel was Matt and Elliot. They bought out Matt early on, but that's where Mattel came from. But Elliot Handler was an industrial designer and came up with the ideas. So we had to outthink the companies in some way, so they became clients of ours. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we just had to think of something that they hadn't thought of.
Wow. And there are authors all over the place, including myself, who are doing that very thing every time we open up the laptop or open up a notebook. We're like, okay, what's the story nobody else has thought of? What's the one that's going to make me a million?
Right. I mean, but you know what? If you look at all the books on the shelf, how many are the bestsellers? I mean, it's
Yeah.
very, same thing for somebody writing music or anything. But you really don't know. I mean, the hard thing is you don't know because it's always surprise. I mean, when I read Tuesdays with Maury, I mean, I was kind of, how does the guy do that? He wrote that. And I went out and bought 50 books and I gave one to every friend I had. I was just blown away. So things come along like that just happen. And it was the same, examples in the toy industry. I mean, Barbie was done in the late 50s. Okay. Ruth and Elliot had two kids, a daughter Barbie and a son Ken. Okay. That was their kids. Okay. And if you tested Barbie in the late 50s, a plastic doll with, big boobs, little feet, a mother would have said, never would I let my daughter play with something like that. Never. And then Cabbage Patch. All the doll people didn't make it. They said, ugly doll, never sell. Number one, you can't make every doll different. It's impossible to manufacture. So Coleco, who had never made a doll before, said, oh, I think we can make this. We can figure out eye color, clothes, this, that. We can kind of make each one a little tiny bit different. But nobody would have. I mean, the doll experts, Ideal and Mattel, ugly doll, never sell. Okay. So, Rubik's Cube, okay? Puzzles were $2. This was a $10 puzzle back then. And 99.9% of the people could never solve it, okay? Right. Never sell, okay? Nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to pay $10 and never be able to. And it was one of the bigger toys in the world, I mean, so it's just, that's how it is. You just don't know, which is the fun of it.
Well, I mean, and sometimes it's even just the simplest of ideas, like Simon. I mean, oh my gosh, I remember like kids in my neighborhood or even family gatherings where we had like tournaments going on with Simon to see who could get the high score and hold it. And it was just amazing.
Simon was my partner, Howard. I had a bunch of partners at Marvin Glass. And then when we closed that in 1988, Howard, Rubin, and myself started over again. It ended up becoming, it was Breslow, Morrison, Terzian, and then it became Big Monster Toys. Everybody called us BMT. I didn't like the name. Terzian thought we needed our names on the door. And I said, okay. So nobody called it, sounded like a law firm, Breslow, Morrison, Terzian. So everybody called us BMT. And then when Rubin finally left the business, retired, and Howard did, we bought a new building, and I said, okay, we need a new name with BMT. So it became Big Monster Toys is what it became. But Simon, so Howard, I did a lot of games. Rubin did a lot of dolls, mechanical stuff. Howard was the greatest toy designer there ever was, Howard Morrison, okay? He did toys, games, plush, ride-on, dolls, Simon. He did the Mickey Mouse phone that we did. But Howard was extraordinary. I mean, he was an extraordinary guy. He was a total child at heart. I mean, it was just, he did Bubba, he did SSP Racer. I mean, I could, I mean, it was, and he was just this wonderful, charming guy. He was 10 years older than me. He's 90 years old now, but he always had a twinkle in his eye. And he just, I mean, he was just, so one quick Howard story, Marvin, said, the first partner to do something that brings in, it was $1 million, in royalties. He's going to give you a check for $50,000 right on the spot. So Howard did it with SSP Racer. Okay. And Marvin gives him a check for $50,000. This was in the early 70s, which is a hell of a lot of money back then. And Howard goes to the bank. He puts $40,000 in his account and he gets $100 $100 bills. Okay, $10,000. He comes back to the studio and he starts passing them out to people in the office. I mean, he was just, you help me here. I mean, it was just, it was so much fun. Every day was fun. It really was quite an extraordinary career.
Oh my gosh.
So
Sounds
Howard comes into my office. I was the managing partner at the time,
yeah.
and he said, "There's this new Texas Instrument chip, TI, 101, very basic." And he said, grab a pencil. And I grabbed the pencil, and he hit a glass on my desk, and he said, hit it with your pencil. Bing. Okay. And then he said, okay, hit the glass. He hit a plate. Bing. Then he did it. And he says, I think we can make some sounds and make this chip make sounds, make lights, and you're following along, like and just adding things. I said, okay, sounds pretty good to me. And the first one was a square box. It was 4 buttons, and one of our designers actually made the round thing, the design original, and we knew that we had something. I mean, sometimes you think you do, and the client doesn't like it. But we just knew that, and it was in the very early days, and it could only generate 31 sounds. That was all the today you can generate 1,000 sounds. I mean, there's no end to it. But
Yeah.
at that time, the Texas Instrument 101, it quit at 31. And somebody must have written them down because Milton Bradley said from 1 to infinity or some ridiculous thing. And somebody said, no, quits at 31. But so that was huge for us. I mean, we just and Milton Bradley bought it in a second. I mean, they just because it was really the first game run by a computer chip, first electronic game.
That's amazing. That's
So
amazing.
and
Wow.
it made the cover of Newsweek magazine. I mean, it was pretty exciting for us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So now you have this incredibly creative drive with the work that you've done, and then being a sculptor as well. And then now as an author, has the writing bug hit you at all? Do you have more ideas
Well,
for books?
I actually have a couple other ideas. I mean, and nothing to do with the toy business, nothing to do with anything else. I mean, in one I'm already started on. And I don't want to tell you what it is yet, but it has nothing to do with sculpting or toys or anything else. Just another idea.
Yeah.
And, but it's not fiction. What I learned in writing is that an appreciation for people who write fiction. You make up all this stuff. I mean, for me, it was just recalling my life, which was kind of easy in a way, But to start from scratch with a blank page and make up stuff, wow! I mean, that's very impressive. I gained a whole new respect for fiction writers. I mean, it's just wow.
Yeah, having been through it a couple of times, I start to I agree. I have a whole new appreciation for other authors, and then I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and we were discussing talking with other writers like ourselves, and I will talk to even like a younger, brand new author, and they're telling me things that just make me go, "Oh my gosh, you are so much better than I am. You know so much more than I did at your age," and it's just like, man, you are a better author, and it's just
I typically, throughout my life, have really focused on nonfiction much more than fiction. Okay, I mean,
okay.
occasionally I read Harry Potter. Occasionally I'll, go there. But the majority of my reading is really biographies, history, philosophy. I mean, other things like that. I mean, I just tend to go that way more than anything else. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just me. I'm learning. As much as I enjoy reading, it's about. I just wanted to grab a book off my shelf. I sound a little far away, but I just and I listen to books. I mean, I really enjoy. I find when I drive to and from the studio, it's time spent in the car, and I like somebody reading me a story. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
and I find my comprehension tends to be much greater listening than it does reading. And sadly, I can't read in bed. I mean, I never turned a page in bed. I fall asleep. I don't even try it anymore. Gosh.
Oh, I used to have an audiobook going
Yeah.
on that I would have during the day. I had a physical book that I would read. I would have that on uh, my table in the living room. So if I didn't want to watch what the kids were watching, whatever, I could pick up my book. And then I had a Kindle by the
Oh, okay.
nightstand, and I would
Yeah.
read. So I would have like 3 different books going
Yeah. No,
sometimes.
no, no, no.
But yeah, this past year I've just been so busy. Same thing. I go to bed, and within minutes I'm out. I can't even open my Kindle.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't even try. I mean, it never happens. Yeah. I just finished listening to A Curious Mind, The Secret to a Bigger Life by Brian Grazer, a famous producer in Hollywood. And
Okay.
I was very impressed with how his approach on curiosity. And I realized that that was something I had all my life. I was curious about all kinds of things, and I think that's a terrific word and a terrific book, Curious Mind.
Okay. Yeah, I may have to check that out. I think my most recent nonfiction was a biography, and it was Phil Collins'
Oh,
biography.
okay. Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. I had no idea he had such a history with the Beatles even before he started
Yeah.
playing music publicly. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
But,
Fun.
so I mean, I was going to say what's next for you, but we kind of discussed that a little bit. That
Well,
you're exploring some things.
The sculpting is full time for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And I went through a series of things. I started doing realistic bronze figures. I have two pieces at the Comer Children's Hospital, University of Chicago, of kids, and I had a lot of success with that. And then I studied with a woman for 4 years doing figurative work, and then she ended up moving away, and then I started doing abstract stuff. And so I've had a lot of success with. I have two pieces at the University of Illinois, two giant steel and stone and boulder pieces. That's kind of stuff I'm doing. And then I just installed in March a piece in Uruguay, and I'm going back down there for the dedication on October 13th. About 2002, the toy industry had conventions every year. Okay, everybody got together and everything else, and we went to a place, and in the morning had meetings, in the afternoon was tennis and golf, and interacted with people, and it was very good for me because I met new clients there and everything else. And we always had a keynote speaker, and the keynote speaker was a marketing guy, a toy guy, this, that. But in 2002, the keynote speaker was Nando Parado, who was one of the survivors of the plane crash in the Andes in 1973. And I kind of hung out with him and ended up becoming friends with him. And then I saw him speak in Dallas. He wrote his own book called Miracle in the Andes. I don't know if you know the Alive book or the movie.
Yeah.
So that's the story. And then he wrote his own book. He came to Chicago to a bookstore, and I went there and bought 35 of his books. He came back to the toy studio and he signed for everything. Then I saw him again in Lake Tahoe speaking. And then my brother and I, who do a lot of traveling together, went down to hike in Chile. We went to Argentina, and we went to Uruguay to see Nando. We met his wife. He has kids. And I said, is there anything commemorating what happened? He said, there really isn't. And I made a sketch. I had an idea for a sculpture. And so it took me a year and a half to do in Chicago. And then it took 3 months to ship it down there. It went on a rail car to Norfolk, and then on a boat for 2 months. So now it's and I went down there to assemble it back in March, but I'm going down again October 13th, and that's the 50th anniversary of the plane crash.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an abstract piece. It's a giant boulder, and on the boulder are 16 stones, kind of rugby-sized stones attached, and those stones represent the survivors. Mm-hmm. And then on steel rods up in the air, 12 feet in the air, are smaller stones, 29 of them, and they move in the wind. And those represent the 29 people who died.
Oh, wow.
So it was quite something for me to do, and anyhow. So I'm doing that sort of thing. I still, make games and try stuff. I'm still playing around with that. It's in your blood, but sculpting is really kind of full time for me.
Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like we were talking about before that you're very creative, and it seems you've got to have that constant creative output. And I can relate to that. I do different things myself once in a while, whether it's the show or whatever. But I mean, I like painting fishing lures, and because the bass, the fish will like to chew it up, and after a while, I'm like, oh, I get to sand this down and make it something different instead. And
I believe that creativity is fostered by pressure. You have a deadline, you have a deadline for, a toy client, you have a deadline for, anything. And so, creative people are not motivated to be creative by money. They're motivated by other things. You can't say, okay, I'm going to pay you more money, be more creative. It doesn't work that way. But Marvin was very good. And I did the same thing. And Marvin, if you were there 2-3 days and you made a prototype of something, you brought it into the conference room to show the vice president of a toy company. I mean,
Yeah.
And so you needed the feedback. And if the guy looked at it and said, nope, terrible, next. Okay. But if he looked at it and said, wow, this is fantastic. That's what you work for. Okay. It's this, the roar of the crowd, the smell of the grease paint. I mean, that's what it is. That's what motivates. So people are motivated by that, by singing in front of an audience, being in the theater in front of a live audience. I mean, so creative people are motivated by different things.
Yeah.
And that's important to understand that.
It is. Yes.
Also that failure is a huge part of it.
Yep, and that's a nice little book in there. You were talking before about the importance of failure and working for it, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here with how important it is again. So fantastic. Where can people find and follow you to learn more about you and your sculpting and your book?
Well, the book, there's a website. You can also get the book on Amazon. I mean, it's been on there for a little while already. And The Game Maker's Life, and there's a website for it. You can actually look up jeffreybreslow.com and see some of my sculptures that I'm doing. So yes, that's
okay. Perfect.
All possible.
All right. Well, and we'll put some links on the episode show notes for that, and for where everybody can go and find the book and follow you, and yeah, we'll get that available. And I guess it looks like it's available August 30th, so we should have this episode up. Actually, it should be up before that, but in any case, yeah, everybody, you can go and pre-order the book and grab a copy for yourself. That's perfect kind of book for for reading, or put it on the table and start a conversation and jump down memory lane.
Thank you.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And it's time for me to step aside with my writer's block coffee and hand the floor to my guest, Jeffrey Breslow, with A Game Maker's Life.
From Chapter 4, Let's See What You Have. My interview with Marvin Glass and Associates was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Tuesday, April 11th, 1967, 2 months shy of my 24th birthday. My 2-year-long dream of getting an interview was about to become reality. I had no idea who would conduct my interview, but I went back and reread the Saturday Evening Post article about Marvin Glass just in case. It reassured me to believe I had a little understanding of this complicated man. In reality, I didn't understand him at all, but I felt in my gut I wanted to work for him. Organized and prepared, I felt confident in both my portfolio and my ability to pitch. I made up my mind that I wasn't walking out of that office without a job. I knew the salary question would come up if I was lucky enough to be offered a position. I had just been fired from a job paying me $5,500 a year, which is a little more than $100 a week. But I felt destined to be a toy designer. So I decided to ask for $10,000 a year, which was a big number in 1967. To strengthen my resolve, I practiced saying the number out loud in front of my mirror, $10,000 a year, $10,000 a year. I rehearsed in a normal voice to make it sound matter of fact. I pumped myself up, cheering myself on and repeating, I'm going to get this job, I'm going to get this job. I rang the doorbell at exactly 10 a.m. and got buzzed in immediately. The ground floor lobby exhibited mirrors, leather sofas, and a fabulous nude female sculptor by Frank Gallo, one of my instructors at the University of Illinois. I was already dazzled, and I was just standing in the entrance space. When I climbed the stairs and reached the waiting area, I noticed 2 Mies van der Rohe leather and stainless steel Barcelona chairs. I studied these in my art history class, but this was the first time in front of the real thing. Wow. Pauline Camberis, the receptionist, had a slender model's figure and long black flowing hair. She wore a full-length dress in a beautiful flower pattern. She welcomed me warmly and showed me into a conference room through a side door. Pauline said, Mr. Glass will be in shortly. turned like a dancer, and walked out and left me alone. She was stunning. A few minutes later, the door at the end of the room opened, and in walked Marvin Glass with a cigarette hanging from his lips. At that time, it was commonplace for people to smoke in the office. Marvin wore a beautiful silk tie, custom-made shirt with MG monogrammed on his cuff, fancy gold and diamond cufflinks. He had short brown hair streaked with gray and intelligent brown eyes. He was so skinny, his pants were slipping off his hips, and he looked unkempt. The Saturday Evening Post had lied when they reported that Marvin Glass was 5 feet 5 inches. He was more like 5'3" and weighed about 120 pounds. I was 6 feet tall and 175 pounds. I towered over Marvin, and when I gave him a firm handshake, his small hand was limp. I couldn't believe that this small man with a feeble handshake was the titan of the toy inventing business. Could this 52-year-old man really be my dream boss? Marvin said, "Let's see your stuff." I reminded myself to go slow and not to rush. Just as I was about to start, Marvin put up his hand and stopped me. He lifted the phone and asked, "Do you want some coffee?" I replied, "No, thank you," and decided it was a good sign that he wasn't in a hurry. Seconds later, Pauline walked in carrying a sterling silver tray with 1 cup of coffee and cream and sugar. She must have known he would call for coffee because she had everything ready. After loading his coffee with lots of cream and 4 teaspoons of sugar, Marvin stirred, took 1 sip, set down his cigarette, and said, "Okay." I thought, it's showtime. I went through my presentation slowly, making eye contact when I could. He didn't ask a single question. He didn't sip his coffee or pull out another cigarette. My delivery took about 5 minutes, and I was done. He looked me in the eye, and I looked back. "I would like you to come work for me," Glass said. I was shocked. He paused for a moment and said, "What kind of money are you looking for?" My preparation in front of the mirror kicked in, and I answered $10,000 a year. "That's a lot of money for a kid your age," Marvin said. I didn't let my head drop as I replied, "Mr. Glass, I'm worth it." With that, he stood up. Glass put out his hand again, and when we shook, his hand was still uncomfortably limp. "Okay, you got the job for $10,000 a year. You start next Monday," he said. It was literally that short. And he walked out of the room saying, "See you Monday. We start at 7:30 and don't be late." He showed me out to the door to Pauline's area. She already guessed I was hired and smiled, "See you Monday." I walked down the stairs and out of the building, but I could have skipped. I was trying to stay composed until I got on the street and could yell, "Yippee!" But it wasn't easy because my heart was racing. When I walked out onto LaSalle Street on Tuesday, April 11th, 1967, the sky was clear, the sun was bright, and then I panicked. I realized I hadn't asked Marvin one single question. Do I have an office? Can you show me around? How much vacation time do I get? Will I get health insurance? None of that mattered. I had just landed my dream job. This was the job I had been thinking about ever since John Spinello told me about the Marvin Glass Company when I was a sophomore in Ed Zagorski's design class at the University of Illinois. And I was getting paid a huge $10,000 a year. It was a morning of pure joy.
All right, that was Jeffrey Breslow reading a sample chapter from his upcoming book, A Game Maker's Life. The book is available August 30th, but you can pre-order it right now by clicking the link in the show notes. Don't forget to also follow Jeffrey in the social media links that I've got down there as well. And Podcast Friends, our affiliate, our sponsor, Scrivener, and the link for buymeacoffee.com is down there as well if you are interested. No matter what you do, make sure you hit that subscribe button though so you don't miss out next time when I'm back with an all-new author, a brand new book, and an all-new sample chapter. Take care, everybody.